Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks. On Wednesday, the 13th day of November, year of our Lord 2019, welcome to the John Moore Show. We begin our shows with something that when Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi hear it, they want to run out of the room screaming. That would be the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Purpose tip of the day, I want to encourage all of you to make sure you've got at least 10 magazines for each of your firearms at Take Aid magazine, that those magazines are in good condition, no rust, properly stored, so that they're ready when you need them. 10 would be a minimum, by the way, a bare minimum. We have patient waiting in the green room, my friend Professor James McCanney. Professor McCanney taught astrophysics at Cornell University. He taught mathematics at Cornell University. He's an accomplished amateur archaeologist to the point where he consults with foreign governments about matters of archaeology. Author of, I believe, 11 books and weekly radio talk show host. His website is linked at my website at thelibertyman.com. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, John. How are you today?
Really good, sir. How are you doing?
Very good. Very good. Yeah. A lot of craziness in the world today. A lot of misinformation. Let me just put it that way.
Of course. Which information would you like to talk about first?
I sent you something, John. I don't know if you got it, about the gorilla who had learned certain human traits, so they considered him a human. And so he entered the international heavyweight champion boxing ring, where he won 33 rounds in a row, destroying his competition. And so it was actually a spoof. But,
okay. I was going to say gorillas are incredibly strong animals, and I would not get anybody who would get into the ring with a gorilla would be a fool. Quite frankly, they're incredibly strong creatures.
But the joke at the end was that the last guy that he broke the gorilla broke the guy's back in the ring, said that he would not say anything because it had hurt the gorilla's feelings.
Amazing.
And so anyway, it was a parody,
okay.
Play on what's going on today in the sporting world with men becoming women, and then there was another one where a motorcyclist declared his motorcycle a bicycle and began winning international bicycle competitions.
Uh-huh.
And nobody could say anything because they didn't want to hurt the motorcycle's feelings.
Well, unfortunately, there's a certain amount of truth to these things, and these parodies sometimes help break through people's mindset and break through the false beliefs people have, and they do serve a useful purpose in that regard, don't they?
Right. Well, it's the whole parody is on the topic of diversity, which is a joke. Diversity is to make sure there is no diversity. So it's a word. It's a very divisive word being used, and I always say that universities are the first one to claim they're diverse. There's nothing diverse about them. If what they are is diverse, they talk about they have all the different nationalities there, but when all those different nationalities get there, they brainwash them into a communal unity, and so there's nothing diverse about it in the manner that's most important, and that's mental.
Right. I was reading this morning, Jim, that Northwestern University School of Journalism, which is held in higher regard, will no longer send reporters to report on things that might trigger some of their students and make them uncomfortable, violating some of the most basic precepts of journalism, which is to report the news. That's the direction this is going, where things becoming politically correct are going to be changing people's access to knowledge, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And here's another funny story that they're talking about the Arctic being the cause of bad weather. Well, this has been going on for probably hundreds of thousands of years, if not longer. But all of a sudden, excuse me, they're claiming that this is a new phenomenon, and so be prepared for the worst, like like something is new is going on here. No, this goes on all the time. There's nothing new under the sun here.
Blaming the Arctic for bad weather, and do they present a solution to this new phenomenon?
No. They use some new terms. Like last year, if you remember, it was the Arctic vortex,
Right.
and which is a vortex is really the wrong term, because a vortex is what happens when you pull a plug out of the drain.
Right.
Weather conditions are cyclonic storms; they're not vortices. Although they have the same rotational pattern, a cyclonic storm is not a vortex. So, I mean, they had that wrong, and then they kept doing it. So everybody was going, "Oh, the new polar vortex." The only thing new was the bogus term they were using.
Amazing. Jim, we got our first caller on hold. We got Lane in Texas. Good morning, Lane.
Hi, John. How are you? And Jim, how are you?
Good. Go ahead.
Okay, I've got a question. I watch a lot of these cable shows, and one show or series of shows is gold mining. There's guys mining gold. They're diving for gold treasure.
Yep.
I just want to know, maybe if you can, where does gold come from? Is it formed as part of the Earth's process, or did we fly through a cloud of gold 2 or 3 billion years ago? Why is it always found in hard rock? And same with copper or any of these precious metals. I just always wonder how that happened.
Well, or take uranium. How come it's found in places like California, where they're magically having all these fires, just like Oregon or Alberta, Saskatchewan, where they've had fires and burned people off their land, just happen to be where that uranium is. But that's a big question. And the standard story, which has got to be incorrect, is that they formed in stars, and then they were sprinkled like stardust out into the universe and became part of Earth. But you find them in deposits, which is the troubling part. How did all of those gold atoms know to get into the same spot? You know, especially like in a gold vein, where you find gold and platinum and metals are in veins, not sprinkled like stardust around the planet. And so anyway, I'm not going to try and answer your question. I just, another topic similar to that is diamonds. Where do diamonds come from? They say, well, they come up through these volcanic cracks in the ground and are formed deep underground. Well, and then they say it's due to this high pressure underground that diamonds form. Well, that's ridiculous, because how can something that's softer than a diamond form a diamond? With pressure. It's contradictory. It doesn't make any sense at all. Actually, it turns out the diamonds are made on the nose side, the sunward side of comets, with electric currents, electron currents that are there, and carbon atoms. And you can do that. That's been discovered in a laboratory. But where all of these came from and how they got situated where they are is a question. And I'm not, like I say, I don't think there is a good answer, but I can tell you that the standard answer is bogus.
All right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Lane, thank you for the call, sir. The call number is 800-313-9443.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good example of standard science being bogus, yet if you pick up a textbook, that's what you read. And in fact, I just saw an article recently where scientists claimed they solved one of the issues where heavy metals, transuranic metals, were made in stars and then sprinkled like stardust, and they claimed that there was more than previously thought. But there again, it's bogus, because you find these in concentrations on Earth. How did they get into these concentrated areas? So it doesn't answer the question.
Well, in my neighborhood, of course, we have lead mines and have been for more than 200 years when the French miners first showed up, French engineers. Um, and it's a small community and people know each other. It's been about 40, 50 years ago. They routinely do test drillings to find out what's below the ground and, that might be recovered. In one of these test drillings, Jim, they got down about 40 feet or so, and they struck refined copper, not the hard green rock that's unrefined copper, but a deposit of refined copper, which of course can't happen in nature. It's impossible in nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they closed up the drill site, and everybody was told not to talk about what they'd found because what they found can't be found. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, this world is a very different place than what you've been told, believe me. And for example, when they drilled down and found oil deposits that are 15 miles under the ground, well, that kind of kills the story of dinosaur bones in fern forests causing oil.
Right.
And so then they go, oh, well, it just forms underground naturally. Like these hydrocarbons just form, and due to pressure, the magic word, oil forms. And it's called, I forget the term, too early in the morning for me to remember the bogus term, but every time something becomes obviously false, they immediately come out, abatic oil, that's what it's called. I believe that's the term, which is totally bogus. Nobody has ever taken dirt, put pressure on it, and formed oil. If you could, you'd be a zillionaire. But anyway, they can take these ideas, pawn them off on the public, and everybody puts it in a textbook and repeats it.
Well, the follow-up on that, it's been about 150 years that oil started being produced in Pennsylvania. And those same oils that are 150 years old are still producing oil, Jim.
Right. right, exactly. The reality is that oil, there's no oil shortage. There's as much oil in the world as there is water, possibly more. And the reality is that hydrocarbons come from our passage through comet tails. And historically, remember the biblical stories of the rain of fire and naphtha? Right. Naphtha is oil. That's what it is. It rains in from comet tails as we move through the solar system. Occasionally we pass through comet tails, which are full of hydrocarbons. Just like the Noah's flood, which is a very real event in history as we pass through a comet tail. But it's not even taught in history books. The Noah's flood or other historical events that are real are completely denied, making Carl Sagan a movie star, claiming that everything you see just kind of evolved.
Right.
Which is completely impossible for everything.
Of course
for just to evolve, just all by itself.
Yeah, well, they manage to fool most people most of the time, but it doesn't take. You don't have to be a qualified university graduate to do research and prove these things fairly easily, right, Jim?
Right. Another quick side note on that: I am convinced that the fires in California are over a uranium grab. This is exactly what they did in Oregon. Where they burned all those ranchers off their land, it's because of uranium. They did it in Alberta, they did it in Saskatchewan, and now they're doing it in California.
Okay. I'm ignorant of, is uranium mined in open pit mines or deep mines?
No, it's strip mined. It's
strip mines, uranium, open pit, strip mines, okay.
Yeah, very rarely do you find deposits of uranium. It's strip mining. And in California, I have a report. It's a PDF report from it's post-World War II, let's just put it that way, showing all the big deposits in California. And right where they're having the fires, isn't it interesting that they have big uranium deposits?
It is. I'd like to see some evidence that backs up that premise. I guess we'll see if the somebody representing the mining interests come in there and buy up this properties, these burned up properties at a deep, deep discount.
Right. Well, it's they anyway. That we could go on and on about that, but that's my, and one could say, oh, that's conspiracy theory. No, it's actually reality. And if you go into the background, this has happened, like I say, 3 other places. Oregon, all of that hoopla in Oregon was about uranium. That was Hillary Clinton, the axe lady, doing her work on the Uranium One deal. That was all part of the Uranium One deal. The Canadian-owned company taking uranium and moving it to Russia. That's what it was all about.
Right. Well, uranium is obviously a valuable mineral that when you get those kinds of dollar amounts into the tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, things happen that would never happen otherwise, don't they?
Right, in the billions, and not only that, but the world power struggle. The whole issue with Robert Mueller was the guy who took the uranium to Putin personally in a briefcase, the yellow cake, to prove the worth of the Uranium One deal, which then ended up in Iran, which the United States paid for with cash when the Obama administration flew airplanes of cash over to Iran to buy our own uranium. That was the Uranium One deal.
I would love to see one of those pallets with the shrink-wrapped $100 bills, 4x4x4. That would be quite a sight, wouldn't it?
Right. Well, what happened with most of that is it was transferred directly to Russia to pay for the uranium.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that was Hillary Clinton, and then she blamed Putin for losing the election, which is pretty humorous.
Also, well, that's what she did publicly. We have a break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned, everybody.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcast. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Wednesday, the 13th of November. We've already had single digits at my home in south central Missouri. By February, I'll certainly have had enough of winter and be ready for a Caribbean cruise. I hope you can join us. The John Moore Patriot Symposium Cruise aboard Royal Caribbean Harmony of the Seas. 20 restaurants on this ship. There's still cabins available as of yesterday. If you want to go with us, you can get details at my website at thelibertyman.com. You can call our cruise director and make sure there's a cabin available. Get that cabin reserved. Our cruise director, Betsy Murphy, wife of my very dear friend Ben Murphy, who helps run a President Trump PAC. How about that? Betsy Murphy's telephone number is 636-530-9502. I say again, 636-530-9502. Visiting Professor James McCanney. Jim, you've got not one but two weekly radio shows. please tell people how they can listen live and to the archives.
Thanks, John. Yes, every Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Central Time, the James McCanney Science Hour at the Crossroad. It's WWCR Nashville, Tennessee, and we're on the wintertime frequency 5.935 megahertz. And then my paid cast, $3.95 per month, and all of that available on my webpage. And John, I want to mention that yesterday I started a Patreon channel. And so that is all set up, ready to go, and I've moved some content there. And so I'm starting that, and it's called patreon.com/jmccsci.com. It's JMCCSCI. So.
Okay, that's good. I think I believe I'm on Patreon. I'm not sure. We're working on some new platforms, and Patreon is one of the ones we've discussed. All these new modalities are certainly hard to keep up with, but you have to be reachable by people, don't you, sir?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, and you know, my little web page, it just doesn't get visibility. I tried to have it converted one time, and I paid some people from India, and they basically ripped me off. They charged me, and they said, okay, everything's ready to load, and I went there, and there was not a shred of anything there. They had just had basically skeleton outlines that they were sending me. So I paid all this money and got ripped off.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Jim.
Yeah. So anyway, it's trying to get my web page redone has been a challenge. So it's still the same as it always was. But people realize that. And, you know, John, when I see really spiffy, shiny, glossy web pages, and we know you and I are in this business, you know that those people are getting help usually from the CIA.
Right. Well, it takes a, you know, I'm happy and pleased with my website, but it's obviously not something that a Fortune 500 company would have. But moving on from there, there's lots of issues going on. This whole impeachment hoax witch hunt thing is going to go on for several more months. I think they can drag it out possibly till March or so. What do you think?
Well, yeah, but I don't know. I'm not sure what they think they're gaining here, because there's no win for this at the end, because ultimately in less than a year there's another election. And even if this is, John, though, this is a revelation of who's in the deep state.
Right.
When you what you're seeing here is literally the deep state at work, what we call the deep state. And these are people who have been compromised. They've been, a lot of them illegally put into offices by cheating and voting, illegal votes, etc. And they owe their allegiance not to the American public, clearly, because they're not doing anything for the American public. And we're looking at down the barrel here of an election where there's going to be more cheating than ever before. I want to mention something. I did my cheating voting report, my white paper, etc., corruption and voting, and I've taken this to many senators, and they don't want to touch it for some reason. They do not want to touch that issue, which is very strange, because a lot of their re-elections depend on being cheated out of their seat. Right. So there's something really big going on at that upper level.
Well, I'm not aware of all the U.S. senators and their stance, but Rand Paul is the first person that comes to mind as somebody who may possibly do something with it, if anybody would.
Right. But anyway, it's a struggle, and we're now very close to the election. But what has to be done is these cronies who are in the local precinct voting offices have to be replaced by honest people. They've been, these people believe that they can run the voting machines and create voting results. They literally do. And this is all over the country. And they're right now owned by the Democratic machine. And just to comment also, something we found out in the last,
Hold that
music
thought,
in
Jim.
them.
We got a break. Call number is 800-313-9443. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcast. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Now we're back. Okay. Yeah, there's something going on. I don't know what. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. Something I need to mention more frequently because it affects so many, literally many tens of millions of people. And that's people voluntarily putting poison in their body called sodium fluoride. Imagine you've reached a pinnacle of your chosen career, that you've become the president of the Canadian Dental Research Association, Dr. Hardy Lombeck. Imagine that you determined to your own satisfaction that what you promoted for your fellow countrymen as being healthy and good was in fact poison. That would be sodium fluoride. And you reached a conclusion. You had to apologize to your family, your friends, the people you went to high school and college with, apologize to your entire country. How about that? How humiliating. But that's what he did. He did the right thing. His apology is there, along with his peer-reviewed articles, dozens of peer-reviewed articles showing how harmful and how poisonous sodium fluoride is to human beings. Right there on my website, just below the article about Red Dawn. And very good. You need to read that. If you have arthritis pain, I have something that'll help you. Not sleeping well at night like I do. I sleep as good as a small child every night. The same thing will help you. It's called the Energy Cleaner. $285, shipping included, American zip codes. And yes, I do something your healthcare professional is highly unlikely to do. I offer a 90-day money-back guarantee. You already have an Energy Cleaner? You have a friend of yours that has arthritis pain, not sleeping well? What a great gift, an Energy Cleaner and a mattress pad to go with it. Details at my website where you can place your order using PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. You can call my toll-free order line 24 hours a day, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Visiting Professor James McCanney, his website's linked at my links page at thelibertyman.com. Jim, we got a caller on hold here. We got Sherry in Kansas. Good morning, Sherry.
Good morning, John and Jim. Jim, a couple weeks ago, you mentioned you got some intel from someone. I guess they lived in Ohio, and it was about either a power plant, coal-burning power plant being shut down, or a coal mine
Yes.
or something, but
Yeah, it
they
was a power
found,
plant.
was it a power plant?
Yes.
Do you know what part of Ohio that was in by chance?
Do I know which one?
Which
The
part of
location.
Ohio?
The location
Yeah.
in Ohio.
It was the very western end of Lake Erie.
Okay.
So and I don't have the notes with me of the name of the plant, but that's where it was.
So if someone was concerned about that in their water supply, seems like the only thing they could do is use your pre-filter medium and then filter their water.
No, the filters themselves would take any of that out. But you'd have to understand what's in the water. Sometimes those areas, it's hard to say how far that water or those pollutants have leached into the water. It's right on the edge of the lake, so it might be in the lake and moving off to cities that are, downstream as far away as New York. So, water is really a complex issue. But in general, in the United States, you should be using water filters that are broad spectrum, that take out literally everything.
Didn't you say it was detected uranium in it?
Well, heavy metals. Yeah, a lot of heavy metals. There was chromium, there was cadmium, there was strontium, there was a lot of, radioactive. These are, from decades of leaving the coal ash, the slag or whatever they call it, out in the rain, and the rain just leached all of this out and into the ground. And so by digging trenches around this defunct power plant, they blew up the power plant, hauled it away, and then started digging trenches to clear away the majority of the pollution that was at the surface. But then they realized that the pollutants had gotten down into the first layer of water reservoir that's underground, and it's working its way down into the deeper chambers also. But anyway, in general, without doing an analysis, by the way, if you have a question about your area, go to my webpage. There's an email address there. You can send in your zip code and tell me your look on your water bill. Tell me your water company, and I can do an analysis of your particular water and tell you what's in it. All of that data is available, and most areas are horrific what's in the water. But if you want to know what's in your water or somebody else's, the email address at jmcc@jmcannyscience.com is listed at the top of my webpage. Send your zip code and your water company, and I'll tell you what's in your water.
Okay. Hey, on the voting thing, I don't know if you've heard about this lady out of Austin. Her name is Laura Presley, and she ran for Austin City Council back in, I think it was the 2014 election. It took 4 years for her suit to make it through the court because she was pretty much a shoo-in, but the people that didn't want her elected, and she's an IT professional. And this is why she went to the court on it. They stuck a kid in there. He was like fairly young kid. He was in his 20s. Moved him into the district so that he could run. And he was he was an atheist. He had, written or had proof of that, stuff he's written or something. And she said there's 52 churches in this small this district that she was running for, and she lost to him, and so she actually got the Texas Supreme Court to agree that there was voter fraud, but the legislature will not do anything about it.
That's very common, and this is at the local level. This is what I keep telling people. There's things like busing illegal aliens around and things like that, but the vast majority of this, it's a carryover from the Clinton machine. This is the Clinton machine, that they have corruption at the local level. And that's why Hillary thought she was going to win. By the way, what I was saying before the break there was that what we found out is that here is the plan, the plan that's been in place all along. Hillary Clinton gave Kamala Harris all of her staff. So she was the darling. That's why she was promoted on CNN as this miracle girl out of California, etc. And the plan all along was that Kamala Harris would succeed enough to where then Hillary would come in at the end and run for president with Kamala Harris and the staff of Hillary, with Hillary running for president after all the debates have finished. And so that's what's going on. And you can see it playing out like the hard cards coming out of a deck at Las Vegas. That's what's going on. And so Hillary can come in perfectly clean, did not have to go through the debates. Bernie will take his $3 or $4 million again, like he did last time. Anybody that supports Bernie Sanders must have mental problems or memory loss, because remember when he got up on the podium and all of his fans were there thinking he was going to be the candidate, and he goes, I give all my support and money to Hillary, and he walks away. He got a new house, $1 million house, and about $3 million. Became a rich guy by stepping down and walking away. And that's what he's going to do again. And so
yeah, but he got beat up first.
Well, yeah, that's
remember
okay.
that?
He doesn't care.
Well, the way I see it, the only way we can change this is to people work at their county level, in our
that's right.
state, who runs the election, and just demand paper ballots is one thing.
No, don't say that. Don't say that. Paper ballots will not cure the problem. The big voter fraud problem is with mail-in ballots, and paper ballots cannot cure that. That is the 95% of the voter fraud comes in that. And then you can just create votes. You can create boxes and boxes of votes. Okay?
So you're
just saying that they're mail-in.
You're saying no absentee balloting.
I'm saying that is where the problem is. And they go out and there are Tom Fitton did a lawsuit in Los Angeles. They had 1.5 million in L.A. only, not the surrounding area. L.A. only was 1.5 million illegal registered voters who were voting for Democratic parties. There's probably Democratic senators in California who've never been elected properly. And so this is a major problem, and we're heading down an election where this is going to be rampant. Believe me, the loss in 2016 gave a very bitter taste in the Democrats' mouth, and they're going to cheat like never before at the local level.
Right.
So paper ballots will not cure it. When people say it drives me crazy, because you got to know what the issue is and what it's going to take to solve it.
Well, Jim,
okay.
I respectfully...
Thanks a lot, Jim.
Thank you for the call there. I agree with you, Jim. Paper ballots are not the answer, but they're part of the answer.
They are part of the answer, correct.
Paper ballots count at the precinct.
Now, I agree with that.
We have over 3,000 counties, Jim, and most of those 3,000 counties have a Republican Central Committee. Many of those committee seats are left vacant because people in the various jurisdictions don't even file for election to be on the Republican Central Committee. People need to be active. Find out if there's an open seat for your Republican Central Committee where you live, and file for that office. A lot of times it's a man and his wife will be the Republican committeeman and committeewoman. Get active. encourage people, your conservative Christian friends, to get registered to vote and actually vote. If we got all the conservative Christian people to register and vote, the turnout would be overwhelming, and we would defeat the vote fraud, wouldn't we, sir?
That's correct, but it's at the level now. Hillary Clinton almost won, but she could not win the Electoral College. That's why they want to get rid of that, because voter fraud. Now, they can beat the Electoral College even with voter fraud, where you have states like Denver took the entire state of Colorado. Minneapolis took the entire state of Minnesota. Las Vegas took the entire state of Nevada. And I could go on and on, where one precinct literally took the entire state for the Electoral College. And so even in spite of that, Trump won by a landslide in the Electoral College. But there was the claim that Hillary won the popular vote, which is totally false. I've showed that unequivocally she got 17 million illegal votes. And this is at the local level. This is there were 10 major centers, but it was nationwide. And literally, in spite of the fact they now claim she won over 400 counties, she only won about 30. How can you have, more popular votes coming from 30 counties, some of them small? I mean, it doesn't add up. Absolutely ridiculous.
Right. Well, people are looking for solutions. We have probably at least 10,000 people listening to us right now, Jim, live and on the archives. And getting active. This is what people can do. They may feel helpless to change things at the national level, but men and women can file for office to become a Republican committeeman from their township. In Missouri, we have townships, and get active, get elected to these positions. Most likely going to be unopposed in many of these townships, and you'll be an elected official from that county at the township level, part of that central committee for your county, and just talk to people you work with, talk to people you go to church with, your neighbors, your friends, your relatives. Encourage them to get registered to vote and actually show up to vote the first Tuesday in November, which is less than a year away, isn't it?
Wait, but also become part of the election process. Be there when the votes are being counted and when those illegal boxes and boxes of mail-in votes are being counted. They're throwing away the real ones and putting in boxes of fake ones.
Right.
And that's
that
what's
would take
being
place
done.
at the county seat is where the ballots are counted. And becoming part of that process would be very important. And be ready to dial 911 and bring in law enforcement if you see illegal activity taking place, right, Jim?
Absolutely. Because they have, and they'll keep these in schools, boxes of votes. They'll keep them in closets in schools. That one election in Florida, where they finally stopped them, they were recounting, and they kept bringing in boxes of votes from nowhere. But they have this all they're busy right now putting these votes into boxes. This is going on right now, getting ready for the next election. And, that's what's going. They're prepared well in advance with illegal votes, boxes and boxes of, millions of them literally all over the country. This is the carryover from the Clinton machine.
Hold that thought. We got our last break. We have time for possibly one more call at 800-313-9443. Canny's website is linked to my links page at thelibertyman.com. Jim, we have our last caller on hold here. We got John in Texas. Good morning, John.
Hello. I have a question about some states split that are not winner take all for whoever gets a plurality or a majority of the vote in a state for the electoral college. How would mandating splitting the electoral votes of states affect the election? If every state were mandated to apportion their electoral votes according to how the voters, what party the voters voted for.
But there would
be a definite.
It would be a definite negative for the Democrats because they got the majority of their electoral college votes from states where one small area won this entire state. And I gave some examples: Denver in Colorado, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Las Vegas, Nevada, Los Angeles, California, Los Angeles and San Francisco Bay Area, California. I could go on and on. Massachusetts, one city. Many of the northeastern states, the same. It would be devastating for the Democrats.
How would you set it up? For each congressional district, you would have. For each congressional district, they've got one electoral vote and there's two for each senator. I mean, one for each senator too. Most of them do it. They will split the ones that do it. Split the vote, split the electoral votes. They elect the electors by the congressional electors are the ones that by the individual congressional district or something, and they elect the senator or the senatorial ones at large. I think the representatives for the Senate.
No, it's too complicated to discuss here in the 1 minute we got left here, but it's a good idea to investigate that, because what's going on now is as with any system, it can be played, and they are playing the electoral college. They almost did it last time, and believe me, if they work hard enough, they can overcome the electoral college system. So and that's why they want to get rid of it altogether, because then you can have 2 or 3 places in the country stuff the ballot box and continually win a single political party. That's what goes on in Chicago.
John, thank you for your call. Jim, we're down to the last 60 seconds or less. What do you want to get to these folks?
Well, John, I wanted to talk about what's going on in Bolivia, so I refer people to my show tomorrow night. I'll be talking about the military coup there, where they were killing leaders of that country. The president escaped with his life, CIA backed.
All right. Well, you'll talk about that in the show tomorrow night. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Okay. All right. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 13th of November. Prepper tip of the day. I want to encourage all of you to make sure that your magazines for your firearms are in good condition, no rust, that they work properly, no damage to them, that you've got at least 10 magazines for each firearm that takes detachable magazines. That would be a really good thing. We have patiently in the green room my friend Jeff Nyquist. Jeff began a quest more than 20 years ago to understand, comprehend, eventually become quite expert in understanding and writing about the international communist threat. His new website is jrnyquist.blog, jrnyquist.blog. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, John.
Well, sir, I read your article you sent that I believe is going to be published tomorrow. Is that correct?
No, I sent you 2 articles. One I published on Thursday and one I published yesterday.
Oh, okay, so one was published last Thursday and the other one, okay. Well, they're very well done, as I expect to see from you. Your work product is always excellent, well researched, well documented, and I also sent you an article this morning. Some chapter summaries of a book as well that the author is making some interesting connections we typically don't see. And all these things play together. Of course, this author is Richard Austin. I'm not familiar with his work previously, but he's making some interesting connections, especially the People's Liberation Army Navy, which is kind of a convoluted name for a navy, but that's what they call themselves, the People's Army Liberation Navy. People's Liberation Army Navy, that's right. And how they've managed to gain control of various choke points on the oceans around the world, including the Panama Canal, which happened under Jimmy Carter. I was kind of disappointed that an Annapolis graduate and former submarine commander would be president when the Panama Canal was given up, not initially to the Chinese, but the Chinese came in and took it over relatively quickly. A major strategic disaster, in my opinion. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, it was a major strategic disaster. I remember when it was being proposed, there was a debate between William F. Buckley and Ronald Reagan over the giving up of the Panama Canal. And, of course, William F. Buckley took the side of giving it up.
Really?
Which kind of surprised me, yes. But now maybe I think differently about it being surprising. Mr. Buckley was always regarded as a patriot and a conservative and looking out for United States national interests. What was the man really all about? And he's deceased, of course. But what was his true agenda? Well, the one thing is that he hated, apparently, or pretended to hate or despise James Angleton. And, of course, Buckley had been in the CIA. He also hated Gallitzin. And the occasion of my canceling my subscription to National Review was when the August coup happened in 1991 in Moscow. And his response to it, rather than saying this is a remarkable event, it was predicted by Gallitzin and Angleton, he attacked them in his column, saying that they had that they had come to him with this book, which ultimately became New Lies for Old. He would not help them with it because they were crazy. Everything they said was crazy, and they were no good. Blah blah blah. So there was some kind of problem there with Mr. Buckley.
Well, his response then was the response that Golitsyn got. He escaped from Russia, I believe, in the early 1960s. I think John Kennedy was president when he escaped and came here.
December 61, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was approximately, about 30 years before these events took place. So the question is, did William F. Buckley ever change his position once it became very clear, at least in most people's minds, that Golitsyn was right? Did he ever change his position on Golitsyn?
No. Like other CIA people, they insisted that Golitsyn had been right about nothing. That Golitsyn had been wrong about everything, which is very odd because it's not true.
It's not true at all, and you don't have to be in the CIA to understand that and prove it, because
all you have to do is read the book, read Gallitzyn's book that he wrote that was published in 1984, and then 7 years later realize that 90-something% of that book came true.
Exactly.
So he was right.
Well, I've taken, and for those who are scratching their heads, let's back up a bit. Anatoly Golitsyn, the title of his book, his first book, New Lies for Old. I usually say it 2 or 3 times slowly, Jeff, so people don't send me emails trying to ask me what the title of the book was. The title of the book is New Lies for Old, Anatoly Golitsyn. a very patient man. Maybe he had a teenage daughter like I did, because he went from 1961 until his book was published in 1984. And he approached not only the CIA, but British intelligence with his evidence. And his evidence was that, and of course we need to back up even a step further. Anatoly Golitsyn did work for the KGB, which is now the FSB. And he had a job, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, at the KGB headquarters. And his job was to be part of what they called at the time long-range planning. And upon penalty being arrested, prosecuted, and executed, he took notes with him when he left his work and compiled those notes, escaped from Russia, wrote a book based on the notes that he took with him when he escaped from Russia, and approached the British intelligence, approached the CIA, and say, hey guys, this is what I've done most of my adult life. I worked in long-range planning with the KGB to develop plans to defeat the West. And here's the evidence. And they basically said, oh, Anatoly, you're delusional. This is a fantasy. Go take a hike. Is that pretty much a summary of what happened to him in 1961, 1962?
It's a little more complicated than that. He of course, he defected. The CIA took him in. He had information. The CIA, the East European division, the Soviet division of the CIA, didn't quite know what to do with him because he had counterintelligence information. He was from the he had been in the counterintelligence branch, but then he was put out into the KGB intelligence branch, and he was the deputy resident of the Soviet embassy in Finland. And they handed him over. They ended up sending him to the counterintelligence staff headed by James Angleton. James Angleton realized after debriefing Golitsyn that he was a rare find, that he was telling them things they knew were true. And he was giving them information that was extremely valuable, so that he proved to be the most valuable defector they'd ever had, in the opinion of Angleton. And as a consequence, Angleton then became very concerned, because among the information that Golitsyn had was that there were moles inside the CIA at a very high level. And of course, at the time, the CIA was having troubles. And as you know, the Bay of Pigs event occurred, where the CIA tried an invasion of Cuba that failed miserably. It was a disaster. And President Kennedy took responsibility for that. But what happened was that Golitsyn really wanted to get his own kind of intelligence operation going outside the CIA, if it could be funded. And because John Kennedy was concerned about what was happening at CIA, Bobby Kennedy came in and met with Golitsyn. And Bobby Kennedy became very persuaded by Angleton and Golitsyn in the importance of Golitsyn. The CIA reached a point at which the Kennedy brothers, mainly through Bobby, were really managing the CIA. That is, Bobby Kennedy was the Attorney General of the United States. Right. He picked up this as a hat. And because Allen Dulles had been the head of the CIA since General Smith, who had been basically under investigation of the FBI for being a Soviet agent, had been kind of eased out of the CIA in January 1953, with help from President-elect Eisenhower. So it was this situation that Dulles suddenly. It was perhaps Dulles who was under suspicion, although we don't know the details now. Later, near his deathbed, Angleton said some things that cast suspicion on Dulles himself. Allen Dulles the brother of John Foster Dulles, who had been the Secretary of State under Eisenhower.
Right.
So the Kennedy brothers were really starting to focus on this. And then, of course, John Kennedy was assassinated about this time. So that's kind of the story. And then, of course, after that, Golitsyn got pushed further and further out from the circle of powerful interest.
Right. And, well, he did the right thing for the right reasons when he published his book. There was a period of time in the I'm going to say the mid-1990s, Jeff, that I would take Golitsyn's book with me to public presentations. And I would hold up the book in front of the audience, and I would say, here on page such and such, it talks about the fall of the Berlin Wall. Here on page such and such, it talks about all the East European countries collapsing and becoming democracies. Here on page such and such, it talks about these events causing the West to disarm from their strategic arms. And then I tell the audience, well, these things all happened, didn't they? And people nod their head, yes, of course they did. And then I tell people, well, these things all happened around a period of 1998, 89, 1990, 1991, and they all nod their heads yes. And I said, so somebody wrote a book about them. What's the big deal? And people are sitting there waiting for what's next. Then I hand the book to somebody in the front row with a page open to the publication date of the book, which is highlighted in yellow highlighter. And I tell the person in the audience, please tell everybody in the audience when this book was published. And they say, here's publication date, 1984, 7 years before these events took place. Now, to write a book which is 95, 98% accurate about things that have not happened yet, major geopolitical matters, with that level of accuracy, is unheard of. But the man did. And he wasn't making predictions at all. He was writing about the things that he actually was part of, wasn't he, Jeff?
Well, he was writing about what he knew. He was making some educated guesses about what he knew because he knew that the planning process for the long-range strategy was in the late 50s, and that Alexander Shelepin was the protege of Dmitry Mironov, one of the strategic thinkers, the KGB general who thought up the deception parts of this plan. And so he had known these people. He knew about these people. He knew what their ideas were because, some of these people had been his instructors in the KGB. He'd been on the counterintelligence side, which is where these ideas play out. But yes, essentially, he knew that in 1960 he could see the writing on the wall. If you look at the big Communist Party meeting in 1960, they have these conferences, the communists do, of the communist parties worldwide. And in 1960, they formally adopted this long-range strategy, which involved these elements and the beginning of the move of these elements, although they did not broadcast what these elements were. And it's also important to note that the predictions made in the book in 1984, the book published in 84, as you pointed out, are still coming true. I just saw a news item yesterday that Russia and China are close to having an openly announced military alliance. And that is one of the predictions in the book, by the way, that once the U.S. says, look, we haven't made a nuclear weapon since before 1991, we haven't tested one, we haven't built a new one, they have a shelf life, our nuclear arsenal is obsolete, perhaps it's unreliable. According to Defense Secretary Gates, it's way overdue on being reliable anymore. And here they're cranking out new nuclear warheads in Russia and China like sausages. And this is all part of the prediction, but that they would become allies with each other against us was one of Golitsyn's predictions. He called it one clenched fist at the end of the long-range strategy, when they would turn the tables on the West and show their hand that they were totally superior to us.
Absolutely.
And that would be the
Jeff,
end. Yeah.
It would be. Jeff, we got a caller on hold here. We're at Dave in Texas. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, gentlemen. I wanted to straighten something out about Jimmy Carter. There's been, over the years, some disinformation about his actual career and how high he got and what his qualifications were. A lot of people think that, and I don't know when this started, probably during his political career, a lot of people think that he was a nuclear submarine commander.
Right.
Actually, he graduated from Annapolis in '46 and entered the Navy as, your typical ensign. But in '53, his father died, and he sought to get out of the Navy early to run the peanut operation, which he did. Now, the highest he ever got was, at least in the active duty, was Lieutenant JG, which is equivalent to first lieutenant in the Air Force or the Army. Later on in the reserves, he made it to full lieutenant, which is equivalent to captain in the Air Force or Army. And he was attached to a diesel-electric sub, and I think he did serve as an executive officer there for a little bit. He entered the nuclear power program but never finished it because his father's death. So he never finished nuclear sub school. And a lot of people blow up his actual career to the point that he was an all-knowing submarine commander of nuclear submarines. It's not true.
Amazing. Well, thank you for the update, Dave. We appreciate that. We have a break. We'll be right back.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcast. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 13th of November. I'm already tired of winter. We already have single digits here in my neighborhood, and we're going on a Caribbean cruise. What a great time to be away from the cold, the snow, the wet, the slop, and be in a beautiful Caribbean on a beautiful ship, the Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, the John Moore Patriot Symposium Cruise. You can be part of it. We still have some cabins available, I've been told. The details at my website at thelibertyman.com. I'll be speaking in Orlando the day before we go on a cruise, by the way. That'll be a fun event. We'll have tickets available soon. If you want to go on a cruise, call our cruise director, Betsy Murphy. Here's her telephone number, twice, slowly, 636-530-9502. I say again, 636-530-9502. Visiting with Jeff Nyquist. His website's jrnyquist.blog. I say again, jrnyquist.blog. If you got a question or comment for Jeff, give us a call at 800-313-9443. Let's continue, Jeff.
So we were talking about Gallitzin.
Right.
And it's very important to realize that of course, there was a battle in the CIA because the defector came after Kennedy's assassination. His name was Yuri Nosenko. And Yuri Nosenko brought information that was meant to discredit Gallitzin and to was the basis later for people to claim that Gallitzin was a false defector and Nosenko was a genuine defector.
Right.
And, of course, they determined, Pete Bagley, the CIA guy, was the one who brought Nosenko in from Switzerland. Nosenko defected. Nosenko claimed that he had access to Lee Harvey Oswald's file. And, of course, this made him of significance to the CIA. But Bagley and others in the CIA, including James Angleton, determined that Yuri Nosenko was lying about who he was. He could not have had the career path he claimed. He didn't know anything about the building of the First Chief Directorate at Yasenivo, where people in that branch of the KGB are trained. He didn't know where the elevator in the building was, I think, something like that. Bagley's written extensively on this in later years. He passed away a few years ago, but in his latter life, he wrote books on this subject. Even a KGB general, after the fall of the Soviet Union, had admitted to him at one point that, why did you believe that man, Nosenko? Nosenko died in 2008 at the age of 81, still receiving pay from the CIA. So, yeah, Golitsyn was basically persona non grata at the CIA by 1971. I think that's the year. And, of course, Angleton was kicked out of the CIA in December 1974. So there was this war, and this war was over whether Golitsyn or Nosenko were the real guys. And of course, it was Nosenko told people what they wanted to hear to some extent, that they'd never had any penetrations inside the CIA. Golitsyn said they did. You had what really was decisive, though, was Nixon's election in terms of Golitsyn being kicked out. Because, you see, Golitsyn's information conflicted on China with what Kissinger and Nixon wanted to do. They wanted to open China, and Golitsyn was saying that the break between China and Russia was a false break. It was a manufactured split between Russia and China. And he had actually heard the head of the KGB say so, or suggest so, in a lecture on false splits, on manufactured false splits. Alexander Shelepin in 1959 became the head of the KGB and was heading up a class or a meeting about false splits and how they could make them. And one of the KGB officers asked, what country would be the ideal candidate for a false split with the Soviet Union within the communist bloc? And he said China.
Right.
And that was the year before they started doing this split thing with China and Russia.
60 years ago. I've said this before, but it bears repeating. The men who run Russia are Caucasians on one hand. On the other, their mindset is Asian. And the point being, they think and they plan decades in advance. So here we are talking about a conversation that took place at the KGB headquarters 60 years ago, 1959. And we're living the consequences of that right now, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. I mean, when you have a dictatorship, a collective dictatorship system, like the communist system, of course, they can think in long terms because they are going to, they see themselves as being in power that whole time. I mean, in America, we have an election, a presidential election every 4 years. Theoretically, the administration could change every 4 years, and certainly every 8 years. So you can't have the same group in power that long.
Hold that thought, Jeff. Hold that thought. We got a bottom of the hour break. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 13th of November. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. you want some stability in the economic, financial part of your life, your family's financial well-being, you need to check out Swiss America, gold and silver coins, gold and silver bullion. Top of my website at thelibertyman.com. You'll see what looks like a nice Christmas package there, red with a gold ribbon on it. Just click on that, and you'll be at Steve Hunt's landing page for Swiss America. Contact Steve. You can do that by filling out the contact information there, or you can give him by telephone call, and he'll be glad to mail you some nice publications that have to do with the economy that will help you, educate you. Steve's telephone number is 800-630-1491. I say again, 800-630-1491. Give Steve a call. He'd be glad to help you determine ways to make your family's financial situation a better one. He can do that. Also, my website is something that will help you if you've got arthritis pain, joint pain, back pain. Are you not sleeping well every night like I do? Sleep as good as a small child. That's where the energy cleaner comes in. If you already got one, which hundreds of you do, what a great time to get a gift for somebody that's having those issues with arthritis pain and so forth. The energy cleaner. Yes, it will help. I stand behind the energy cleaner with a 90-day money-back guarantee. So right there at my website under products, just click on that. We got a drop-down menu. The energy cleaner is the fifth one from the top. Click on that, and all the information you need is there. What the energy cleaner is, the testimonials, the information on the mattress pads that go with it, all the details there. We can place your order using PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. You can send me a check. My address is right there. Or you can call my toll-free hour line 24 hours a day. Here it is, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. This visiting with Jeff Nyquist. His website is jrnyquist.blog. I say again, jrnyquist.blog. You got a question or comment, give us a call at 800-313-9443. Jeff, of all the defectors, Golitsyn is the one that I like the best. There are some other good ones which you've met and talked to personally. And the real defectors, not the make-believe ones like the one you just mentioned, the real defectors have been a real heads-up, a real early warning system, haven't they, sir?
Yeah, if you listen to defectors, they're coming from a different world. And if they explain that world to you, it often contains understandings of things to come, because that world is a world of strategy, of plans, of things that to them are rather obvious. And when you have high-level defector like Jan Shana or Anatoly Golitsyn, who are close to the strategic side, what you hear from them is details that end up becoming the future contours of history, because the communist movement is a worldwide movement in which the Soviet Union is the kingpin, it's the general staff. And the communist movement, it represents this new religion of socialism that means to transform the planet, and they have to do it very carefully, very slowly. They have to do it with a great deal of planning. And that's what you end up seeing into when you look at the defector literature.
Absolutely. We got a caller on hold here. He's taking a break from feeding his goats. That would be Jerry in Texas. Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning, John and Jeff. Jeff, what you're talking about is the old frog in a pot on the stove scenario there. Suddenly, my wife heard, I read something from one of the Soviet leaders, oh goodness, 40 years ago. And, that's basically what he said. And, he says, the biggest problem you have in the United States is you have a turnover every 4 to 8 years, like y'all were talking about, in government policy and different things. And, I agree. The question I have is what can we do different? We got to the point where we've got the deep state, the people behind the scenes that don't turn over with the elected officials, which can be a good or bad thing. But I guess I'm asking, is there a reasonable solution to keep a constant governancy, I guess, if that's a word. But anyway, do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, well, if we first of all, in order for us to come together as a democracy or as a republic that believes in solutions, that wants to get a solution, we have to be informed. We have to understand who our enemy is and why. And we don't have that right now. People have no clue. And the first step, the baby step, is to get people like yourself and the people listening to this show to understand what the real issues are and what the enemy is doing and what we're up against. And once we've got there, we can solve this thing as long as people can understand it. We can get enough people to understand it, then it's going to be solved.
I told John not too long ago that up till the last 10 or 20 years, I didn't realize there was a difference between democracy and a republic. And when it finally sunk in, I said, "Oh wow, here we are." And you never very seldom hear an elected official refer to a republic, the United States, even though the Pledge of Allegiance has a republic for which we stand. In our current situation, it probably should be replaced with a democracy in which we stand, because that's what we are, unfortunately. But I just, there's got to be a solution to the deal. But you look what we got running for office today, and for president and our Congress. I don't know. As a friend of mine too said, I don't know. I just don't know. But how do we get out of this deep state and get back to even keel? I know knowledge is part of it, but still we have to have a consistency in our non-elected officials, if you will. And we got to get away from a bunch of these alphabet agencies.
Well, Jerry, I think I understand your comments, and let me give you some ideas here. First of all, we used to have loyalty oaths for men and women who worked for these various agencies, such as the FBI, the CIA, the Department of Justice, and so forth. Those were done away with. The loyalty oaths were done away with. We need, for men and women who work in these agencies, in these sensitive positions, we need to have thorough background checks before they're hired, and ongoing checks on the part of counterintelligence people to make sure that people in these sensitive positions are in fact loyal Americans and not operatives for a foreign power.
We got the fox guarding the chicken house. Definitely, I think that might be a perfect analogy of what you're saying. But we kill that fox, we're going to have another one take its place. And, we vet these people, but who's vetting them? The loyalty is to the pocketbook nowadays, not to the country or their living conditions. And that's the problem we've got. I've got too many years vested in this in my retirement to cause an issue, because I'll lose all my retirement, and then what am I going to do?
Right.
I don't. Anyway, I've rambled enough, but I just what we got to think about is how to have a consistency, even with the turnover of our elected officials. And I don't know what it is. Right now, we got a consistency, and that's downhill, and that's what we don't want. But
right.
Thanks for taking my call.
Okay, thanks for the call, Jerry. Jeff, you got any follow-up on how we can make sure that men and women in these sensitive positions in these agencies are in fact loyal, patriotic Americans and will do the right things for the right reasons? What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, the solution they had was indeed loyalty oaths back in the 1950s.
Right.
And the laws were passed in the 1950s to enforce those. When I was at the University of California in the 1980s and teaching there at UC Irvine, we had to take a loyalty oath. And, of course, they've done away with them since then. Since I don't remember if I think they did away with it when the Clintons were in the White House. But you see, why would anyone get rid of a loyalty oath when you have this problem? Why would anyone do it unless they were themselves communists? Why would we get rid of those? Don't we want our government officials to be loyal? It's a really serious problem because if you really look at what's going on in Washington, you have a battle going on between people who are loyal to something other than the Constitution. They're loyal to Marxism, to the new socialist religion.
Right.
And that is opposed to the Founding Fathers and their principles, basically.
Right.
And that's what we have. That's what we've allowed to creep up on us.
Well, we have. I've told this story before publicly, but it's a good time to tell it again. I was at a public meeting in Metro St. Louis. This would have been, more than 20 years ago, 22 years ago. And there was a young man there who was clearly very bright, very well educated, and assuming a leadership type position in this group. And he told me what his background was, and I instantly recognized that he was a communist because of something he revealed. So the next day I called up an FBI agent I knew to give a report of this man, his identity, and as much information as I could so that the FBI could do some follow-up. And here's what the FBI agent told me. He says, John, it's no longer part of our mission statement to keep track of communists. And I said, what? What are you telling me? It's no longer part of the mission statement of the FBI to keep track of communists and what they're doing? He says, no, John, we no longer do that. So I can't and I won't take the information. I doubt that's changed. It needs to change. It really needs to change. But I was shocked and surprised and disappointed when I was told that, Jeff.
Yeah, well, that's the evidence. That's a prime piece of evidence that the communists have been taking over. Because why would we be getting rid of the oath? Why would the FBI no longer be investigating them? Because they've gotten into positions that are strong enough that they can eliminate the investigations against themselves. And now they're the ones investigating patriotic Americans and scandalizing us with claims that we are spies working for Russia, et cetera, et cetera. They've turned the tables. It's sort of like their moment of revenge.
Well, it's a brilliant strategy, and it is, unfortunately, before Donald Trump was elected, it was working quite well. Donald Trump has really thrown a wrench into their works, hasn't he?
Well, yeah, and of course the hearings started this morning. I don't know if you watched them. I watched the opening of the hearings, even though it's very early here. The opening statements of Mr. Schiff. I mean, they're very well prepared for this. Right. They're really trying to put across this idea that the president has been coordinated his election with the Russians.
That was part of the opening statement by Mr. Schiff?
That was his, yeah, it was all about that.
No
it was
kidding.
Back to the Russian collusion thing, yeah. I was kind of surprised.
Well, my two youngest grandchildren are in middle school, and I don't believe that would fool even them. It's so over the top crazy. It really is that they would go back to that.
It's so well rehearsed now. It's so well rehearsed that it's beginning to sound more credible. Believe it or not, I was listening to it and thinking, wow, he's really got the act down now. I mean, after you've had so many dress rehearsals, and I think they had the dress rehearsals in private behind closed doors.
Of course.
And now they're ready for Broadway,
Right. What you saw this morning was not some kind of spontaneous utterance. This was something carefully rehearsed, carefully staged, and practiced well in advance of what took place at 10 a.m. Eastern Time this morning, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And of course, our government and our media are full of people who are part of the new religion, socialism, and they want to overthrow Christian civilization. They want to create a new form of civilization. They are revolutionaries, just like this Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said on the campaign trail. She said, are we ready for revolution? And then she said, I am. She used the word revolution. She's a revolutionary. You
Right.
can tell even before she said that. I mean, she talks like a communist. She does the things and supports the things that the communists have behind their agenda. And you say, well, all these organizations that support, the global warming thing and support the fight for women's rights and all these other things, they're not communists. Well, that's what my article was about, how yesterday, how this strategy, the United Front strategy, they go into all these organizations.
They do. And they're insidious, they're determined, they're driven, and they fully intend to be successful. And they got a plan A and a plan B and a plan C. They will not fail in their opinion, will they?
No, and of course, by going into all these non-communist organizations, they actually can guide them and coordinate them in ways that help their agenda. And that's what we don't understand. Yeah.
First was I was back out of the Army and in college. The 1st of April, 1970 was the first Earth Day. And it was promoted as this wonderful thing that would help make the planet healthier and cleaner and greener. But there was communists behind the organization of that, wasn't there?
Oh, yeah. Earth Day is April 22nd. That's Lenin's birthday. Lenin, the
Lenin's
first
birthday,
Soviet
22nd
dictator.
of April. Okay.
Yeah, That's Lenin's birthday. That's the reason they picked Earth Day as April 22nd. It's code language for them.
How about that? Isn't that special? We got our last break. The call number is 800-313-9443.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcast. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Jared Moore here with Jeff Nyquist on Wednesday, the 13th of November. Jeff's website is jrnyquist.blog. This hour has just flown by, Jeff. We had an interesting in-depth discussion of Anatoly Golitsyn, which I think is very foundational, and that one book is just so, in my opinion, so very important to understand what's happening, why it's happening, and what to expect. I encourage people to read that book. What do you think, sir?
Oh, yes, and other books by people who have defected not only from Russia and the Eastern Bloc, but from the communist movement. I wrote my piece yesterday about Benjamin Gitlow, who was one of the top communists in America, one of the founding leading communists of the American Communist Party, which became the Communist Party USA. And he explains beautifully in his book The Whole of Their Lives is the title of his book, about how the whole thing works, how he was summoned to the Kremlin, how he spoke with Stalin, how he broke with Stalin in 1929, but how they organized to take over America back in the early 1920s.
That's right. That's right. Well, they've been at it for a century, obviously, and defeating the United States has been the goal, the prize for the past century, hasn't it?
Yes, the United States is the great capitalist superpower, and of course, even then, Lenin said that their revolution would sweep the world, and America would be the last capitalist dinosaur left, and they would topple it last by strangling it, by owning all the rest of the world and cutting us off from all the rest of the world, the trade of the rest of the world.
Well, all the pieces are in place for that to happen, and they've got their foot soldiers. Many of the armies south of our border will be part of this, the jihadists from the Middle East, the cartels. As bad as evil these people are, they typically like to use other people's sons instead of their own sons to die for their cause, don't they?
Well, yeah, of course. One of the things Gedlow says is that communism breeds a very cynical view of the world. And he said rather than being a utopia, they're creating an even more cynical system to replace capitalism. And really their methods are so evil, their methods of taking over and making their revolution, that the system that they create in place of the existing order is evil. And it's really a good analysis of why it is the way it is. Yeah.
It is, absolutely. Any final words, Jeff? We're down to the last 60 seconds or so here.
Yes, final words. Well, go to my website, jrnyquist.blog. You'll see all kinds of articles there and resources, links, and discussions. There's people are having discussions there on the different articles, and I'm trying to do about 2 articles a week. So,
well, good for you.
Take an interest. I'm trying to grow the site, and thank you everybody for listening.
Do that. Jeff, thank you, sir. I'll be back next Wednesday. Appreciate it.
Bye bye.
That's it for the day. Get your medical supplies, your energy, plenty of essential oils now while you can.